Welcome to Hallway Conversations with Matt and Dave. We've both been teaching for quite a while now, but we still have plenty of questions about education. And this podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about topics that we think are important for Christian educators to consider. Welcome to the conversation. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Hallway Conversations. I'm Dave Mulder.
And I'm Matt Beamers.
We know your time is very valuable, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen in on our hallway conversations. So, Matt, I know you were bringing the question for today. I'm sitting here with bated breath, brother.
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about?
Well, Dave, the question for me is, in looking back at your teaching career, so 20 plus years, I want you to think back to when you first started teaching, or maybe it actually could be even recently, but I guess when I thought of this question, I was thinking more when you were beginning out. So I'll let you decide where you want to take it. But my question for you is, what is the best or worst advice you got as a teacher? And I'll let you pick best or worst, or you can have, and maybe you're right away thinking of a story. People can't see your face. You're kind of cringe laughing right now.
That's so true.
But yeah, what comes to mind when you say best or worst advice? And we will not mention names here for this sake.
We'll protect the innocent.
Protect the innocent.
So, yeah, sadly, I don't know if this is a commentary on my mental state today, but immediately when you asked that question, I thought of a worst piece of advice. So I'll start there, but maybe we'll come around to best advice too. Like many novice teachers, I really struggled with classroom management my first year of teaching. And I think it's a known issue in our field to the point to say we joke about it, that's unkind, right? But we know beginning teachers are going to struggle a little bit with this because until you develop that repertoire of strategies for addressing student behaviors, that it just can be really rough. And so I know in my inner makeup, I am the sort, I really want people to like me. And now I'm at the point, I'll even, as I'm introducing myself to a new group of students, I'll just confess that to them because I feel like it's healthier that way. But anyway, my first year of teaching, let's just say it did not go swimmingly, right? And I grew, I got better.
Yeah.
We're all on a growth trajectory of some sort. But yeah, I was meeting with my mentor. We had a kind of a mentoring program at the school where I was serving at that time. And I was meeting with my mentor, and it must have been, sometime in the fall yet of that first year. And his advice to me, kindly and well-intentioned, but I think it's some of the worst advice I ever got as a teacher, was, well, didn't they teach you? Don't smile till Christmas. And maybe you've heard that one too, right? And I think it was offered sincerely and it was meant to be helpful. And the problem is I internalized that. And so I would say my second year of teaching, I started off with a scowl on my face, brows furrowed. I was not going to smile till Christmas. And to be fair, I needed some correction from my first year of teaching. They were running all over me, right? But I think I overcorrected. And so that's the sad part of the story, right? That I came with a scowl on my face, and the kids did not enjoy my class, and that was how it was going to be. And good, they shouldn't. And now, from the vantage point looking 20 years back plus, I think back on that advice, and I think that really was terrible advice for me because as you've gotten to know me, I'm sure you know, I'm usually eyebrows up. I mean, I lead with positivity and enthusiasm coming into the classroom, and I've learned, I guess better to play to my strengths. I'm just going to have to name that to my students even and say, I mean, I would rather that you like me than that you dislike me. But now let's move past that, and we're going to get into the real work of learning.
Was there a moment, Dave, and I guess to ask you to think back 20 years to a specific moment, but where along the line did you realize that wasn't great advice? Did something, what was the moment of self-realization where you're sort of this, not only is this not good advice, but it's specifically not good advice for me?
So I don't know if I can pinpoint a particular moment in time that would crystallize that or anything for me. But I guess I would say that first year I was struggling enough that any advice that people were giving me for how to better manage my classroom, I was going to grab onto that and latch onto it. And I would say in the second year then, trying to play this hard-nosed brute who was not going to take it from the kids, it was still pretty early on in that fall semester that I realized, like, this is not working for me. This is not who I am.
Yeah.
And that sense that we've talked before about identity, right? Like, teachers have an identity. I refer back to Parker Palmer, like I always do, right?
Yeah.
But like, we teach who we are, and we have to have some honest understanding of who we are as teachers, as learners, as human beings, and then say, yeah, how's God created me to be? I'm going to try to live into the fullest, most flourishing version of that.
Yeah. How do you guard then against, like you said you're open with your students about, hey, like, I want people to like me. How do you guard against, or what's your antenna or barometer, or how do you assess whether you're being motivated for the right reasons, that's actually not guiding you? Or is it okay sometimes that it is? I'm not sure. Like,
yeah, so I mean, I guess I wrestle back and forth with that. And like, would I still lead that way from this vantage point if I was teaching middle schoolers? I don't know, right? Like, it helps that I'm teaching young adults here, because I trust them in a different. That sounds like I don't trust my middle school students when I talk. I trusted them, right? But
trust looks different maybe now.
Correct.
Yeah.
And recognizing that these are soon to be peers entering the teaching profession, most of the students that I'm teaching now, right? I want to model some things for them, and just being that transparent about my own growth and understanding my own inner landscape as a teacher. I think that's important too. But like, okay, so let's go back and imagine, 10 years ago when I was teaching 7th graders for most of my job, and would I lead with saying, guys, I really, in my heart of hearts, I want you to like me. I don't know that there's necessarily an immediate downside for admitting that, right? I guess maybe the carrying this forward, I think about, just today in class, I asked my students, we're, a couple weeks into the semester here, I want to know how it's going. I need feedback. And just like they need feedback from me on how they're doing in their learning, I need feedback on my teaching. And so trying to be that transparent and saying, what are some things I should keep doing? What are some things I should stop doing that are getting in the way of your learning? And I think we can do that. We can take our students' feedback. We can take their critique. That means we have to be a little transparent with them too, perhaps.
As you're talking, it makes me wonder if, because I've received similar advice. This idea of like, hey, start tough. You can always let out slack as you go.
Yes.
Versus if you start too loose, it's hard to regain that. And I do believe that somewhat. Like, to start in the right place, and to make sure, hey, like, there's high accountability, but also high support. I think the mistake I made as you're talking, I think about that, because like I said, I'm sure I've gotten similar advice. I think the mistake I made was assuming that high accountability means don't let them see you smile. Yeah. Like that somehow those things are tied, right? Like, I'm going to hold you accountable, and I take my job really seriously. Whereas I wonder if I had to do it over again, and I can still do better at this, that there's a sense of, I'm going to hold you accountable. Like, for their standards here. And I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm going to hold you accountable in love and grace. I'm going to hold you accountable. But I also want you to know the joy I have in being with you, the joy I have in teaching. In fact, my accountability comes out of wanting the best for you, seeing you flourish as the child God made you to be. And I don't say that lightly. I know that can be a cliche, but to say I want you to flourish in every sense. And I'm wondering, like, to say to them, I'm wondering if you can fully flourish without some accountability. Like, that we need those. And as I said, that accountability can't come without support. But that doesn't mean there can't be joy in the job.
Right. And sometimes I wonder if we set those up as somehow that it's one or the other, right? That, like, they're mutually exclusive. Either we're going to have accountability for our students, or we can have a joyful learning environment. And I guess I'm thinking about that in light of the message of the gospel too, right? Like, Jesus doesn't let us off the hook, right?
Exactly.
We are held accountable.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean the Christian life is not also full of joy.
Yeah.
And yeah, if we can model some sense of that in our classrooms.
No, like I right away am thinking back, not to always go in the way back machine, but thinking of Ed Bolins, who's my high school math teacher. I was terrible at math. I'm a recovering English teacher. Like I wanted to get the minimum done in math and be done with math forever.
Sure.
And Ed Bolins, God bless him, was my math teacher, and he held me accountable. He held me accountable as maybe no one else did when I was a high school student. And I was not a great student. But one of the things as we're talking, as I'm thinking about it, oftentimes when I was held accountable as a teenager, I would rebel or push back against that.
Oh, yeah.
But I never did with Ed. Like, I received his accountability. But it's also interesting to me that without a doubt in my mind, he was the most rigorous, and I don't mean the most homework. He was the most rigorous teacher. No one held me more accountable than him. And no one cared for me more than he did.
Oh,
I felt so cared for. And he got to know me. It started over, he was a hockey fan, and it started over him loving hockey. And I found that fascinating. Was the most human teacher I can remember. What? Teachers like hockey? But I responded positively, and not because he was, hey, hey, buddy. He wasn't. But he was super kind and compassionate and caring, and there was high accountability and high support, and I received it from him. Mm-hmm. And so it's just interesting as I'm thinking about this, as we're talking and reflecting on my own experience as a student, what allowed me to receive that correction from him. Anyways, that was just a quick thought there.
Because it sounds to me then like it has to be in the context of relationship.
Yeah,
right?
I guess maybe that's what I'm saying, Dave, is that in the context of, and it's not that I didn't have relationship with other teachers.
Right.
Like I don't in no way, but it was more I just had this unique relationship that I don't think I experienced with any other teachers. Mm-hmm. Part of it's because I allowed myself to have, I gave myself over to that relationship, right? But also because I felt like he was committed to me. Mm-hmm. Like he was committed to me. And so I could see we laughed and joked, but there was a time to play and there was a time to work. And that was very clear. And maybe because we allowed both. Mm-hmm. He allowed both. And sometimes they even happened at the same time. That's what I'm thinking about in terms of, you can be rigorous and they can see you smile. They don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah. So I'm still thinking about advice, and the original question was best or worst advice. And just even listening to your stories here, I guess one of the best pieces of advice I ever received was from another colleague in that first year of teaching. And her advice to me was have high expectations for your students because students generally perform to your level of expectation.
Yeah.
And I didn't really believe that to be true for quite a few years. I'll just be honest that somehow I figure if my expectations are too high, then I'm going to set kids up for failure or something. But I think generally speaking, I think that is true. And I think that was good advice. We should come with very high expectations and then support the kids to get there for sure. But to expect students to perform at a high level and then see if they hit that mark.
I think when done in the context of relationship, to have a student say to you at any time, you brought the best out brought the best out in me. That could mean relationally or emotionally, but even academically. And you brought that out because you believed in me. You held me to this standard and you believed I could get there. Not that it was unattainable. Mm-hmm. That's different than having a high standard. But to set a standard for a student that says, I'm setting this for you because you can get there and I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you get there. You're not going to do this alone. And I think that's the key to it, right? This idea of I am all in on you and I will do what I can to help you get there. You do not have to travel this road alone. And I think when students know that and teachers commit to that, I think then you can hold those high standards. Because I've also seen, and I've done this myself, of I'm going to hold a really high standard. And and my standard's so high. Look how low the grade average is on this test. Because right, like,
oh man,
right, like somehow, like somewhere that's bad advice I got. Like that somehow a lower average on a test is reflective of rigorous teaching, and it's like maybe it's reflective of bad teaching, which it would have been for Matt Beamers. Like I'm okay to say that, right? Is like that to take pride in that, but again, I think yeah, have a high standard, but don't set the standard and then kind of let the student fly alone, so to speak, right? You have to be co-pilots on that journey, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and really to make it, I joke with students, this isn't going to last too much longer because no one's going to get the reference. But it's like High School Musical said, we are all in this together, after all, right?
Highly underrated musical, if I say so myself.
Hey, I mean,
yeah, but no, but there is, right? Like it's, it was interesting in a class I teach here today. I asked students, I said, who's one teacher that made a big impact on your life, a formative experience, it was a formative presence in your life that, in 10 or 20 or 30 years, you'll be telling your kids or others or about that teacher. So kind of like I just talked about Ed Bolins, like who's your Ed Bolins, right? And it's interesting, right? What those stories kind of have in common. And a lot of them, it's not like she taught me my times tables or she taught me how to read, or he did. He or she may have done that, but that's not sort of the 60-year story that they're telling about this teacher, right? It's so much more than that. And I would say, in generalizing now, sort of a theme of all in, like they're all in on me, right? And yeah, like I would say that would be a deep hope I would have for myself, or I know you would have, or that most teachers have, is that students know we're there to help them succeed. We're there to help them remove whatever barriers might be in their way and to hold them to a high standard because we believe they can get there.
Well, and that's the old cliche, right? Students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. But how much truth I think there is in that. Yeah. And to how do we move students to that point where they don't think we just have some ulterior motive, right? We're just their teacher. We're out here to just convey particular information to them, right? Totally. But I think that too sometimes, right? Like if I think back over my school career, like when did I learn certain things? And I can almost never pinpoint when I learned a particular thing. Sometimes there's a particular project or something that I can key it to. But a lot of times I can just remember how I felt in a particular teacher's classroom. Yeah. And yeah, like when I think back to, I had a middle school science teacher, Bob Slaggers, and he was a phenomenal science teacher. I became a science teacher myself, and I like to think I picked up on some things from Bob. But he taught me to love creation. He taught me to build model rockets. He taught, like a lot of the things that I still love and they became part of me because I was in his class and just being in that presence of a passionate Christian educator who taught me from his expertise, but also taught me from his place of caring and concern and love.
That it has to be both, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
Like that, Ed had this phrase always in math when he was explaining an equation. It was always like, "Oh, it has to gotta be." You'd always say it has to gotta be. But when you talk about sharing your passions and your expertise in the context of relationship and love, it has to gotta be that way. And to teach Christianly, it has to gotta be that way. It can't be all formulas and the proverbial brain on a stick without forming their hearts, and it can't just all be about relationship without helping them to think critically about what it means to participate in God's unfolding story of redemption. It has to gotta be both in a Christian classroom.
Couldn't say it better than that. Friends, thanks for listening in.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day. This podcast was quite literally dreamed up by Matt and Dave during one of their hallway conversations. Our music was created by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is an independent podcast created and produced by Dave Mulder and Matt Beamers. Thanks for listening.